It's time to talk about population density, and notice I have this in quotes. There are three ways to calculate population density: by calculating arithmetic density, physiological density, and agricultural density. Within the context of cultural geography, this is the way we look at the spread and density of population, human population on this earth. We calculate these things out, and then we try and draw conclusions based on the numbers that we get. We're going to begin with arithmetic density. This is what most people call population density. It's the number of people divided by the total land area in a given location or place or country. It's commonly used because the data are relatively easy to obtain. You can go online and Google pretty much any country and get the square miles, or generally it's going to be in square kilometers, of course, and the number of people, and you just do the math and you've got the arithmetic density or the population density of a particular place. But what does it tell us? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to use the United States as a base, and then several other countries are going to be added in. I want you to know that I have had to do some of the calculations on this myself rather than just pulling them offline, because most of the information gets dumped online in the metric system. So I've converted this to miles because it's something that as Americans, most Americans understand better. So with the United States, our population density, or our arithmetic density, currently is about 94 people per square mile. So every square mile, we have about 94 people. Of course, it's not spread perfectly across the entire landscape. The Netherlands, which is in Europe, it's one of the most densely populated countries in Europe, and for that matter in the world, 1,316 people per square mile. Egypt has 266 people per square mile, but 3,840 in the Nile Valley and the Nile Delta. We'll come back to that. Canada, our neighbor to the north, 11 people per square mile. Mexico, our neighbor to the south, 171 people per square mile. And China with 397 people per square mile. Does this tell us anything? Look at it. I mean, really, the Netherlands is a rich country. Does that population density mean that it's not? So look at this map. We've seen a map like this before when we were looking at the concentrations of population on Earth. If you look at this, this is arithmetic density, population density. The darker the color, the greater the population density. And the lighter the color, the less the population density. I don't know if this is necessarily telling us anything specific yet. How about some places in the United States? You know what the most populated state is in terms of density in the United States? Not number of people, but density. New Jersey, if you leave Washington, D.C. out, 1,208 people per square mile. The least densely populated state? Well, I think you know it's Alaska, 1.28 people. But in the lower 48, Wyoming and Wisconsin are tied at 6 people per square mile. What about California, the great state of California? Well, we're 11th on the list in terms of the states with 253 people per square mile. Does this mean anything? California has the 5th largest economy on Earth. There are only 4 countries in the world that have a bigger economy than California: the United States, China, Japan, and Germany. So I don't know that this is necessarily saying much of anything yet. This is the arithmetic density of the lower 48 US states. The darker the green, the fewer the people, and then as you move towards red or rust, the more people per square mile. You can see the western central part of the United States, not a lot of people. Eastern part of the US, much more people in terms of arithmetic density. What does arithmetic density tell us about a place? Well, not much. It doesn't provide any measure of quality of life or ability to sustain a population or wealth, access to food, shelter, healthcare, education, social mobility. The next way we look at density is through physiological density. This is the number of people per unit of arable land. Arable land is quality farmland. It's land that's suitable for agriculture. This explains the pressure on the land to feed the population. The higher the physiological density, the more people that must be fed per acre of arable land. This gives us a manner to assess the sustainability of a population in a particular area or place or country. And it gives us a manner to assess the need for importation of food. Let's take a look. With the United States, we have 179 people per square mile of arable land. The Netherlands, it's 2,412 people per square mile of arable land. Egypt, 6,682 people per square mile of arable land. Canada, 78 people per square mile of arable land. Mexico, 1,151 people per square mile of arable land. And China, 3,521 people per square mile of arable land. Okay, this is at least beginning to get at something because it's telling you pressure on the land. At the same time, we have this outlier of the Netherlands. Take a look at this map of global physiological density. The darker the green, the greater the physiological density. You can see China over here, Egypt right here, the Netherlands right there, Colombia, Cuba, okay? Then the United States, Canada, look at that. Let's look at Egypt for a second. What does the large difference between arithmetic density and physiological density say about Egypt? Well, it says that there's a small amount of arable land that must support a substantial population. In fact, 95% of the 100 million people who live in Egypt live on just 3% of the land. And that 3% of the land is the Nile River Valley and the Nile Delta. Look at these maps. The map on the left-hand side is a satellite composite of Egypt. You can see that that green snake that comes up from the bottom of the map towards the top of the map, that is the Nile River Valley. In most places, no more than a few miles wide. But the Nile is the lifeblood of Egypt. And then you can see as you get to the top of the map, that triangular shaped feature is the Nile Delta, where the Nile dumps into the Mediterranean Sea. Just to give you an idea of how important the Nile is, 100 million people live in Egypt. The country right next door, which is just off to the west, to the left of Egypt on that map, is Libya. Libya is 2.5 times the land area of Egypt, and only 6 million people live there. What's the difference between Libya and Egypt? A river. That's the difference. And then if you look at the right-hand side, you can see exactly mirroring the Nile River Valley and the Nile Delta is population density, because this is where almost everybody in Egypt lives. Okay, now take a look here. Now you can see this is the Nile River Valley, and you can see how lush the landscape is in the Nile River Valley. But just off to the background, you can see the desert, because the Sahara Desert is a stark, stark landscape. Agricultural density is the number of farmers per unit of arable land. With one exception, which is spelled Japan, this helps explain the wealth of a country. The greater the percentage of farmers generally means greater poverty. Why? Because rich countries farm using a mechanized agricultural system. They use tractors and combines. Poor countries use human and animal labor. Let's take a look. The United States, 3 farmers per square mile of farmland. The Netherlands, 33 farmers per square mile of farmland. Egypt, 346 farmers per square mile of farmland. Canada, 5 farmers per square mile of farmland. Mexico, 90 farmers per square mile of farmland. And China, 206 farmers per square mile of farmland. This now is telling us something, because you can see the Netherlands, while it has a high population density, arithmetic density, and physiological density, you can see that it does not use lots and lots of farmers because it has a mechanized agricultural system. This is the global agricultural density. Again, the darker the green, the greater the agricultural density. And then the lighter the colors, the less the agricultural density. Let's take a look quickly at the case of Japan. The arithmetic density of Japan is 462 people per square mile. The physiological density, wow, 7,953 people per square mile of arable land. That's how many people per square mile of arable land must be supported with that land. And the agricultural density is 1,562 farmers per square mile of arable land, farmland. So that's a lot of farmers. Why does Japan have an agricultural density with numbers that are similar to much poorer countries? It's because 11.5% of the country is arable. Most of the country is not good for farmland. It's a very rugged country. And culture plays a huge part. They have a limited amount of arable land, and that forces them to use every square inch of fertile soil. Furthermore, there are lots of small farms in urban and semi-urban settings. When you're in Japan, you notice this right on the edges of the town. There's farmland, sometimes right in the town. And they have strong historic, cultural, and religious ties to the earth and to farmland. And because of that, the government heavily subsidizes small farms to keep them alive. They do not want in Japan large corporations taking over all of the farmland. What they want is to keep the small farmer in business because there are strong historic, cultural, and religious ties to the earth and to farmland.